So right now, you're working as the lead engineer at Northwestern Center for Enlightened Disagreement. For listeners, can you please tell us a bit more about what that entails?
Yeah, so for context, right, just to take a step back, this Center for Enlightened Disagreement, it does what it exactly implies. We are at this time of a lot of political contention. It's very hard to get people on the left and on the right to talk to each other. And for the people in power, whether they be on the left or on the right, there's an incentive for trying to get you to dislike the other side, that my side is right and your side is terrible, awful, so on and so forth, right? The center combines people across a variety of disciplines, so poli-sci, psychology, technology, whatever it may be, to try to answer this core question of how can people disagree well? And so the work that I do, right, is a bit more on the implications of technology towards that. And so as we can talk a bit more in a bit, there's a lot of ways that technology amplifies the tendency for people to disagree selectively. Plenty of work that shows, for example, that if you go on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, you only see content that you agree with. And you also have the effect of you also tend to see people who are not like you in a negative light. The people that you disagree with, you only see in negative ways. So there's plenty of work around how people have wrong impressions and technology makes it worse. It amplifies it. So in my capacity, I tackle this question of enlightened disagreement from more of a technological stance, thinking about ways to design tools and algorithms to be able to promote enlightened disagreement instead of what currently exists, which is echo chambers and people that I agree with are perfect and people that I disagree with are terrible.
Right. And as a follow-up to that question, nowadays with the, improvement of social media, improvement of all these technologies, different algorithms, like, you go on Instagram, you go on TikTok, and you search up a certain video that you want to see, and then you're scrolling, right? And then all these videos that you see are reinforcing your own beliefs, as you said, because they're your interest, right? The social media algorithm is very intelligent. It's very good at tracking your interest. So my question is there sort of, you think, an obligation, maybe not even an obligation, but maybe some sort of duty that like the CEOs of all these different social media companies might have to maybe not only maybe refrain from using all these algorithms to only show like political stuff that you agree with, but do you think they also might have a duty to show stuff that might not be exactly what they agree with?
If it were profitable, it would be already done, right? And so it begets the question of, is there an incentive to do so? Obviously, that's a question on the policy side, but in terms of possibility, it definitely is a possibility. And we just published a paper recently in Nature that was the impact of a large study where we basically designed our own in-house equivalents of these kinds of engagement algorithms that you see on TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, things like that. And we show that if you take that algorithm and you tweak it just a little bit, right, you can actually show people things from people that they disagree with, right? Or perhaps things that are less toxic, less rage bait, things like that. We did show that there's a difference there, right, between that and then one that purely optimizes engagement. Maybe a little bit less engagement, right? Maybe, I click on it a little less, but it's definitely not allowing you to have these negative downstream effects. And so that's an open policy question, right? Of, do you enforce top down this requirement for executives at these companies to mandate this? But I think step one perhaps is to make people aware that there's another option in the first place. For example, I don't think the average consumer of Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok understand what actually is happening with the algorithm, right? They may think they know, but at the same time, what people don't understand, and this is what other parts of our research are showing, right, is just how different the world is. If you're a liberal and you see a conservative feed, for example, in the American context, right? Or like if you're someone who is in their 60s and you're a boomer, as opposed to early 20s right out of college, you just have a different feed altogether, which completely changes your perspective on what's true in the real world. And it changes our narratives, because if the things that I'm seeing on the feed, right, are not the same thing as yours or someone else, right? If we see three different snapshots of reality, it's going to be impossible for us to talk about it. And so I think from my sort of bias and perspective, because people spend so much time now on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, on these social media applications, you kind of have to start there because that gives us the information that people have in common to be able to talk about in the first place.
Right, so you're talking a lot about the consumer. I'm wondering, in terms of things that we as like users of these products can do, is there a way to use these products in a more or less polarizing or productive way?
Yeah, and that's a great question. I think it's very difficult because if it were easy, everyone right would do it. But I think there is a chance to try to consume it a bit more intentionally, right? You can imagine, for example, there's a way to disable the algorithm on Facebook. A couple of clicks away, you can make it chronological. Of course, it's made to be hard, right? Because they prefer people to
Yeah.
be on the algorithm. But if you wanted to, you could have a chronological feed. Or like, for example, I know on Instagram, there's been a bit of work towards this, like trying to see the feeds of other people. And then on Blue Sky, which is an alternative to Twitter that we've been involved with at the center, they even allow you to explicitly choose the algorithm. So instead of having like, I open Instagram and there's the algorithm that is for me, I can choose and see like, here's the algorithm that shows me only sports content. Or here's the algorithm of people that are in Kansas, right? I can very much pick and choose, but there's an intentionality towards it. And there's a lot of efforts on the grassroots to democratize the algorithm layer as such that I can opt into the kind of experiences that I want. But again, it takes a lot of intentionality. And step one is being aware that this happens in the first place.
Right. And you mentioned that like the ordinary person might not even be aware of all the algorithms that are going on with their social media viewership and stuff. And something that makes me remind me of something that I think the ordinary person does not understand either is AGI, and how AGI, it's catching a lot of media attention. This form of artificial intelligence that can think just like a human and perform multidisciplinary tasks. And when you consider like AGI in the realm of discourse, do you see this version of AGI, presenting itself as a barrier or as a tool to healthy discourse?
Great question. That actually is a part of ongoing work right now at the center, just the use of AI and eventually AGI, ASI, all these sorts of buzzwords, right, towards conversations. Like a practical example, right, is that Facebook tried to introduce, I think, like AI chatmates a few months back, where I could just talk to a person that has this profile, but it's like an AI agent, right? And what's the impact of that? Or you can imagine like people talking to ChatGPT as like a best friend, or like these AI partners, right? AI boyfriends, or like AI therapists. And what are the implications of people that converse with AI instead of other people? There's that tangent of it, but then there's also the other tangent of the way that AI allows you to engage in conversations themselves. There's this idea that's popular, for example, on Twitter that basically says, assume that an account that you see is a bot, right? LLMs are now so good that it's almost impossible to know if the person on the other side is a chatbot or not. And so I have to say that I think that perhaps a sort of a unifying thought I have around all this, right, the role of AI in discourse, is that it makes it even tougher to know what's real and what's not. A person that is sufficiently inspired, has enough money and enough motivation, can just spawn a million AI agents that flood Twitter, right? Converse with you and get you to believe something. And you can see all these conversations and you begin to believe that, that's what everyone believes. And a lot of our work, we also have a line of work in the lab now that looks at how people perceive conversations online and what they think the public believes. And there's a lot of work right now that shows that if you have, for example, a million AI agents that are all telling people, buy this product, right? They begin to get promoted on the algorithm on TikTok, right? And so now if you're scrolling TikTok, that's all you see in the comment section. But to you, that idea is dumb. Then it makes us seem like I'm the one who's wrong because here's a million comments of other people that think actually I'm wrong and they're right. So I have to say AI has a way of making things worse right now because people with money and access can promote ideas and spread things that the common person doesn't believe. And a lot of our findings in the Institute basically show that most people align on most things. But if you have a motivated enough actor, you can actually have a symptom where if you log on to these platforms, you think that most people are crazy, are absolutely crazy online. In reality, most people that are on Twitter or Instagram never post, and they're just the average person.
Interesting. I know whenever I engage with ChatGPT, whenever I give it an idea, it always says like, "Wow, that's such a great idea! Like, you should go pursue that. That's awesome." It's always like very in agreement with whatever I have to say. How do you think that kind of aspect contributes to depolarization and AI's effect?
Good question. Perhaps to start, right? Talking to people in the real world, you end up seeing people that are more okay disagreeing with you. Even if it's impolite to disagree, right? It won't be like a chatbot where like ChatGPT says, "Oh, you're so brilliant." I would hope that if I'm talking to a friend, right, that friend may not tell me the idea is dumb, but hopefully that friend could pause and be like, "Tell me more," or like, interesting,
Yeah.
right? They would pause. ChatGPT would never do that. In a similar way, right? Like thinking about non-LLM like algorithms. So like on Twitter, right? You won't see people telling you that your ideas are wrong. All you see are them telling you that you're right and you're so brilliant and you're part of a movement. So, but that's because both of them are trained on a similar thing. The idea is that these AI algorithms are designed to keep you hooked. They keep you going. On Twitter, that might be keep you scrolling, right? TikTok, keep scrolling. On ChatGPT, the goal is to keep you talking to the app, right? If the app tells you that you're wrong and you're dumb, it'll get you off the app. So they're incentivized to tell you, "Oh, you're right. You're so brilliant."
Right. And I think you were sort of getting at this too. From your research, is there perhaps some intuitive understanding of how other people work within the realm of discourse? Something that humans might just have that you think it'll be very hard for AI to replicate? Maybe like an intuitive sense of emotion, that human connection in the realm of discourse, understanding that other side that you just don't think a chatbot would be able to replicate.
So right now, this is an open area in research on LLM development. But basically, LLMs right now are capped on things that can be expressed in text, right? Well, as I'm sure as you guys have experienced too, right? Like I can see a text message and interpret it 2 or 3 or 5 different ways based on the subtext, right? Who it's from, the context, how long it took, right, to open the message, things like that. There's all this context around the message that LLMs never get. LLMs only get the text message that you see. And right now, that's an area that people have not solved, which is the subtext, context. So for example, right, an LLM just sees a conversation online, but they may not know the relationships between the other people. Are you talking to a friend? Are you talking to a stranger online? Do you have a history of that person and how you talk to them? So basically anything that isn't explicitly expressed into words that exist somewhere, LLMs are going to have a hard time being able to manage, which means that, and we're seeing this increasingly now in the research on LLMs in the workplace, for example, where it's proving kind of hard to be able to automate people's jobs with LLMs. I'll be, in spite of all the hype from OpenAI and Elon Musk saying, "Wow, everyone's going to be out of a job. Don't even try." In spite of all that hype, in practice, it's proving kind of hard to automate away people with LLMs. Because as it turns out, there's a lot of parts of people's jobs that are not just things that involve a keyboard. There's communication, right? There's agreeing to things in meetings. There's, I agree, but that person disagrees. And you go back and forth. There are human parts of the experience that don't ever end up on like an Excel sheet or a Google Doc. And the thing that you actually see on the Google Doc is the result of all this back and forth, debating, arguing, things like that. And it's proving kind of hard for LLMs to do all of the stuff that humans are doing for their interactions.
Right. And touching on this human experience too, you interact with different people based on their personality. So in different ways, right? Like how I interact with Davis might not be how I'm interacting with a different friend or even my parents. So in the work realm, how do you think that could pose a challenge to AI development, these LLMs, if maybe AI can't really adapt to different people's personalities and how you might need to change the way that you're interacting with different people?
It's difficult. It's proving very difficult, right? And I think that AI can try, but it's really a matter of trying to get people to work well with them, because it's proving kind of hard for AI to be able to adapt to people if people don't adapt first, right? If people don't meet the AI where they are. Like perhaps by example, right? ChatGPT could not know how to talk to me if I don't talk to it first, right? And then I don't give it examples and I don't have a history of ChatGPT. The more that I use it, right, the better it gets. It learns my name. It learns the kind of questions I ask about it, right? It begins to learn and personalize to me, but I have to reach out first. Now, for example, my wife is very not AI. She does not use ChatGPT at all, right? And so her experience with AI isn't tuned and personalized to talk to her because it has to be her coming to it first, right? And so what we're seeing is a similar problem now where the AIs are already powerful enough, but they're not being integrated into where people already are. So what has to happen is for AI to work somewhere, people have to first start to use it in the first place.
That's really cool. Earlier, you mentioned some of the projects that you were working on. If you were to build your own social media application with like the principles of civil discourse and ameliorating polarization in mind, what do you think are some of, let's say, the most important feature or some of the most important features that it would have?
Yeah. Great question. And we're actually experimenting a lot with this in the lab, just trying to figure out different kinds of ways to have people opt into their own experiences and to engage with online content in the ways that are good for them. But the biggest thing would be to be able to give them control over the kind of feed they want. There's been a little bit of work on this, but basically, and I think they even have this now in Instagram and Spotify, for example, where I can say, I want songs that are more like this, right? Or I want posts that are like this. They're beginning to do that, which is good because it shows an appetite, right? At the grassroots level for people that want this level of control. But just to push that even more, right? Where people have even more knobs to control of, I want more of this or I want less of that. And to make that more explicit, and so I think Blue Sky is the best example of a platform that enables that, where you can just click and subscribe to a feed about dogs or a feed about people in Kansas. I'm glad that there's appetite up for it and Instagram and other platforms are beginning to adopt it. That would be step one, right? More control. The next thing is context and explain to people why a thing was shown or recommended. Luckily, again, it's the same thing where this is beginning to happen more often. I can see like on my feed why a reel in my feed appears and why it was shown to me. They're increasingly doing this now on larger platforms because there's an appetite for it, but pushing that even more and having more explanations for why something was shown and even more explicit than what's already being done. It would be great, for example, because if I could scroll on TikTok and then it says, and then I check why it was recommended, and then it says, because I saw that you liked this, I thought that you would like this post. That level of deep transparency would be great. And then the third thing is prioritizing metrics beyond its clicks. The point in the way that these algorithms are trained on these platforms is to keep you on. That isn't a good thing. It would be, and because as past work has shown, the way to keep people on is to make them emotional and in a negative way, to make them feel negatively, to make you feel sucked in and upset at something. It's going to keep you on there longer than being happy. If you take two posts, right? A post about a new cat, right? Like I have a new kitten. She's great, right? That's post A. Post B is a post I disagree with about politics and someone being dumb, right? The one about the post being dumb is going to keep me staring at the post because I'm going to be upset and seething, right? So technically it was right and they got me. That kept me on the app. But if there were other metrics that we could optimize for, right? There are things, for example, that have been proposed, ideas like looking at people's engagement, right? And seeing, are they having productive comments? People are commenting. Are they commenting good things back and forth? Or is it just spam and I hate you? So looking at the content of their comments, right? Looking at how diverse their feeds are. Are there feeds from people across the country or just from people that are in Miami or LA or Kansas, right? Diversity on that front. You can also look at things like the rate of how much people consume fake news and misinformation. Because right now, that's not a thing that is filtered out. And sometimes you can just lie online, right? And then it keeps you on there and people keep engaging with a post, even if it's just a lie and it's rage bait. You can imagine a metric where you say, I want to reduce the amount of fake news people consume. There are all these other things that you could completely optimize for that are beyond just keeping people on the platform that companies currently are not trying to do. But our past work in the lab has shown that if you did try to optimize on those metrics, you can still get a pretty engaging experience and not have people hate each other.
Thank you so much for that. And sort of as a conclusion, I know you've been involved in many research projects involving AI, social media, algorithms, and discourse. For our audience, do you mind sharing maybe your favorite one?
Quite a few. Perhaps the one that perhaps was possibly the most interesting is this past research that we worked on that was just published in Nature, where we basically had to create our own social media application from scratch. Basically had to create it from scratch, think about like thousands of people on the application, millions of posts per day, looking at creating basically our own sort of version of Twitter, right? And then proving and showing that you could still make a pretty engaging app. And we saw that people kept coming back to our app, kept checking, kept looking at it, right? They liked the experience, but it was also not full of toxic content, not full of people being upset at each other, things like that. So for us and for me, that was pretty impactful because it shows that if you wanted to, you could. And so now it's a matter of convincing people that it's important enough to invest in trying in the first place.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming here again. I know we had some technical difficulties.
No worries, man. I get it.
We really appreciate it. Definitely a lot of stuff to think about. It's an interesting intersection that you work in.
And I think that right now, given the advancements in technology, AI is everywhere, right? It definitely is the time to be able to have these kinds of conversations because right now, if people like us, right, are not thinking about these things, talking about them, spreading awareness, who will, right? And technology is advancing so quickly that it's up to everyday people and grassroots movements to say, I want this, not that. And so I think talks like this are a good place to start.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Of course. And thanks, y'all. I appreciate it. Let's keep in touch via email. Thanks, y'all. Bye.